Hello and welcome to the Dynasty Locker Room podcast, episode 6. I'm your host, Nation, and after some technical difficulties, we're here ready to break into that top 25 of your Dynasty baseball prospects. With me today, I have Tessmonster and Tyler. Tyler, why don't you tell us what you've been up to this week?
Yeah, so I just recently came out with my Michael Kopech article on why you should be buying into all the hype. I know he's been a prospect that's been on that radar as someone that everyone should be buying into, and it's been a couple years of, what are we waiting for? But I think that time's finally come, and I break down, why the relationship with Tony La Russa is a good thing for Kopech as well in his development. I also am working on my NL Central Bust article, which should be launching, if not this weekend or early this next week. So look for that to come out, and I will be moving to the next division. But right now, I'm excited to really be breaking down our top 25 prospects and show you who made it.
I'm definitely excited to jump on and read that Michael Kopech article. He's been somebody that I've been super high on, and I've been waiting to break out, and I'm hoping that your article is going to agree that this is the year after a very promising year last year. So definitely some good information to be found in there. Tessmonster, what do you got going on?
Well, as you mentioned, we had some technical difficulties when this was supposed to air. I had just come out with my buy and sell for the National League outfielders, looking at players like Brian Reynolds and if he can continue breaking out, what we can expect for next year. And a guy you and I have talked about at length, Nation, Mookie Betts. Is 2018 Mookie Betts a thing, or should we be disappointed if he's not that? Is he the player he is? So that was an interesting one to break down, along with some AL West prospects. Obviously, a fairly thin division, as Tyler knows, with his Angels out there. But speaking of AL West prospects, with the news of Josh Young, how do you feel about that shot bet, Tyler?
Not often would I wave the white flag this early on with a shot bet, but I think after tearing his labrum, I think it's pretty safe to say that he will not be breaking camp unless, on other news, we don't have baseball this year. But I'm willing to take the shot on the hopes that baseball will resume here in April, and just know that, this was not a good shot bet on my part. So here's a double shot bet to Nick Tessman. Cool.
You never like having to have the first official shot bet be lost or won because of an injury. But, Tyler, that's the reason that shot bets are here, and way to man up and take that shot. And unfortunately, you took that shot, and you said baseball, we're looking to have it back. Something about this Rob Manfred is really irking me with the news of the delay to the season, and it doesn't look like there's going to be anything in the future. Tyler, what are your thoughts here on the lockout?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely clear that they've made some progress in working towards, the economic issues that they're faced. I mean, obviously, that's the big strength here is manipulation from teams on minor league players, the arbitration pool on how much that should be, the CBT threshold on if that should be 230 million and grow from there. So there's a lot of big things that I still think that they're a little bit far apart on. If I had to give a timeline, I'm thinking we're probably going to have a 120 game season, and we're going to be missing baseball in April, which is sad news. But the players, it's hard not to take the player side on this. They're trying to, sign the next 10-year deal that's going to really allow minor leaguers to stop living off ramen and stuff. So I think this is a big step for them, and I think we look for baseball probably mid-May.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have those minor league players driving Uber in their spare time anymore and being able to really focus on baseball and kind of their profession going forward. But enough of that Rob Manfred talk. I feel like I need to take a drink just to get those words out of my mouth. Let's dive into those top 25 prospects. And let's look right away with the prospect you guys have listed at 25, and that's going to be Hedbert Perez. Tyler, I know you wanted to touch on him. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm extremely high on Hedbert. This is someone Milwaukee signed out of Venezuela at a very young age. He was highly regarded to have that, build that he could really grow into and really develop his power. He came in at about 5'10", 160 at the age of 17. But at the end of the 2021 season, he's weighing already around 185 pounds. So we're talking over 2 years, he's already added about 20 to 25 pounds. He's a big physical specimen, big lower half, which I'm very fond of. That, you know, those legs are going to really drive in that, you know, his plate approach. If you've seen film on Hedbert, he already looks like a big leaguer. He's got a very unique batting stance where it's slightly open, but his foot actually faces inwards, and he's got a small little leg kick. But when you actually watch him and you compare him to other minor leaguers, even, you know, a step above him, he's got elite bat speed. And as far as it goes, he picks up fastballs well. He picks up off speed well. He's not showing any struggles between those two. Between rookie ball and A ball in 2021, he batted .276. He only had a .330 on base percentage, which sort of you know, touched on, you know, his plate discipline was a little lacking compared to where it should be, and I think that's going to develop. He put up 7 home runs as well. Overall, you know, it's a risk in drafting someone this young, this high up, but the overall great raw power, you know, the ability to be a 2020 guy very quickly and move up in the league in 3 years. I still don't expect him to debut till the end of 2024, 2025. But I think, you know, this is a guy that could be one of those big breakout players that you got to get early on. It just depends on what kind of restrictions your league allows for you to draft someone this early.
Yeah, I know you and Nation are really high on your guys with a good lower half, whatever that means. I mean, here you're talking about arguably the highest variance prospect that we're going to see in the top 25 here. Perez is a physical hitting left-handed outfielder with a compact swing that still has a ton of juice. He's showed advanced plate discipline previously for his age group, which kind of make his swing and miss numbers coupled with his low walk rate a little bit perplexing last year in his first taste of pro ball. Still, that raw power on a 5'10" frame give him a ton of projectable power going forward, which really segments him in this group of prospects that we're talking about in that top 25. Destroyed rookie ball hitting before his struggles in A ball. One of the things I'll be looking for, like we've talked about with Nolan Gorman and some other hitters, the ability to adjust to pitching. If he goes back to A ball and can figure out what he was doing, figure out how to adapt to better velocity, better breaking balls, that's going to be something I'm looking for, along with advanced plate discipline out of him. He doesn't turn 19 until April, like he talked about. He's going to likely pick up in that A ball, like I mentioned. Definitely some seasoning needed, as he touched on. I don't expect to see him before 2025.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. You know, you just watch him hit, and if you watch any film on him, you would be shocked that you're watching an 18-year-old at that time, just how quick his bat speed is, how developed he looks. He does look like a big leaguer. In the outfield, he's got a quick first step. I definitely profile him as a right fielder, though. I don't know if he has what it takes to stay long-term in center field, but his arm strength and everything, I think he could be a right fielder. But I think you're probably right. 2025 is probably the earliest we see this guy, but this is a chance to buy really early on and someone with all of the attributes to be an elite ball player.
Yeah, and you talk about 2025, and it seems so far away, but you got to remember, he was only 18 last year. I mean, talking about breaking big league camp at some point in 2025, I mean, that's 22 years old, which is earlier than we see a lot of hitters. So, you know, to be talking about somebody like this at this point, I think it says a lot to the tools we think he brings to the table. And it's not as much that, you know, he's just far away. He's incredibly young.
Yeah. The difference between what he's doing at the age of 18 and what I was doing at the age of 18 is pretty embarrassing. So I think it's time to move on to the next player.
And that next player we want to talk about is Tyler Soderstrom. You guys have him at 24. Tessmonster, you got him up there at 21. Let us know why you have him so high.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise we're talking about another catching prospect on this podcast, but he was one of the ones that was a bit perplexing to me why he fell a little bit in that 2020 draft. But he was the talk of the spring training last year and showed many why he deserved that first-round pedigree in spring training by swatting some monstrous shots. adapted quickly to A-ball pitchers last year with a strong 306 average and 12 big flies in 57 games. Despite his more polished abilities at the plate, though, works counts really well, hitting pitchers' pitches. The Athletics seem really committed to his development behind the plate right now. It means it could be a little bit of a while before we see the 20-year-old in the show, I think. Do the A's take the Bryce Harper route and move him off the position? It's certainly a possibility because his bat has the upside to move through the ranks at a quick pace, but he's really raw behind the plate. He's talented defensively as a catcher, but he's just not there yet where it's going to transition to a big league catcher as quick as his bat is. To me, his fantasy value is obviously a lot better if he remains behind the plate, where he could be, a perennial top 5 catcher at the position for fantasy purposes, but he could also be a viable option in a corner outfield spot with ease too, and definitely see his bat get into more games than he'd see behind the plate. If he changes positions, I think he could be up as early as 2024. If he doesn't, it might not be before 2025.
Yeah, I'm with you on everything but one thing. I don't see him staying at that catcher position. I think, they've came out and spoken about how he is behind defensively on his development and how he should be a lot further along, that his blocking skills are, really poor, that his framing skills are pretty poor. But the one thing that he has over a lot of catchers that we've talked in the top 100 prospects is he's got a great arm. I think I could easily see him switching to first base and right field standpoint. And the reason why I think that that's going to happen is with how great of a hit tool he has and what we're seeing. I am extremely high on his hit tool playing at first base, right field, left field, doesn't matter. I think he's going to be an elite hitter. He's got great approach at the plate. He's got plus bat speed, very clean path from a swing, covers the plate very well, and he's consistently on time with hard contact all over the field. He hits righties and lefties very equally, which is a huge thing from that left side of the plate. He looks a lot like Christian Yelich at the plate, but you and I actually watched filmed on him, and we agreed that when he hits a home run, it just has so much resemblance of a Shohei Ohtani swing on how he sort of comes out that box from that left side. So I think his bat will play no matter what position he ends up with, and I think they're going to hurry him up along because his bat's too good to slow down.
Yeah, and that's kind of the crux of what I was getting at. You watch him swing the bat, and it's clear that there's immense talent there. And that's really what my question is, obviously catchers take a notoriously long time to develop, especially defensively and offensively. But, where he's at in his development standpoint, if the A's really are committed to him being a catcher, it's going to take several years versus a bat that could, be up in pretty short order. So that's my big question mark on him at this point. And while I think he can play catcher, I think if the A's really want that bat in the lineup, it's going to be an easy decision.
Yeah, agreed.
It seems like you guys are talking about that big hit tool, not deciding whether or not he's going to be a catcher. But with the A's and looking like they're going into a full rebuild mode here for the next year or two, do you think that leads some more credence to giving him some time and playing at catcher, Tyler?
I mean, the A's always have looked like they're going into a rebuild mode, but they've always found a way to call up prospects, make it sort of pan out. So I never consider the A's in rebuild mode. They just always love to keep that salary cap low. But as far as it goes, I see where Tessmonster's coming from, and I can easily see them taking the time to develop him. I just think when it comes to a organization that likes to, use homegrown talent and save money and buy low arms, in free agency, I could easily see them saying, screw it, let's shift him off that position and get him up sooner because his bat's too good. I see him being at AA this year, AAA in 2024, and being one of those guys that if he keeps hitting the way he does, they're not going to be able to keep him down.
It makes a lot of sense. Definitely looking forward to hearing that loud contact off that bat and bringing it and seeing how it translates against major league pitching. And now let's kick it over to someone who I regret not drafting last year, and that's going to be Alek Thomas. And you guys have him at 23. Tyler, I know you wanted to touch on him. Kick it off here.
Yeah, I mean, last year I made a lot of comparisons between Corbin Carroll and Alex Thomas, and it was easy just because, same team, same position. I thought Carroll was going to have a much better upside player from a power standpoint. So it wasn't even close to me. Corbin Carroll was, a grade above, which, we'll talk about him here soon. But I think I truly underestimated the hit tool that Alex Thomas provided. I still, stand behind the belief that, Alec Thomas, even with the scouts, they said that his hit tool was below average. I still stand behind that power is not going to be a huge factor, him going to the bigs, but I think between his hit tool and speed, I think this is a candidate that's moved up the draft boards heavily after, how he did this last year. 2019, he had 10 home runs, 300 batting average, 380 on-base percentage over 114 games. We knew his plate discipline was great, so there was no surprise there. He also managed to steal 15 bags, but got caught 11 times. This year, though, is when he quieted all the haters between AA and AAA. He batted .313. He improved that on-base percentage to .394. He put up 18 home runs over 106 games. He also had 13 steals, but got caught 9 times. One thing, a lot of scouts have said that his base path intelligence definitely has to grow, but he has the speed to easily steal 15 to 20 bags per season. When it comes to Alex's defense, he has a subpar arm, so don't look at him staying in that right field position, but he's got great instincts. He's got a quick first step. I easily see him profiling, as a center fielder, if not maybe left fielder. Overall, truly underestimated how good he was. He's an easy 2020 candidate in my mind. And I could easily see him being a late call-up this year. If not, we see him easily up in 2023. I'm a big fan of Alec Thomas. Definitely prove me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's a thief of bases, but it sounds like he's still in your heart. This second rounder from 2018 was absolutely electric last year. You mentioned that .313 average, 59 extra base hits, and even better numbers in AAA than AA. Really advanced plate discipline and plate recognition, and pitch recognition, that is. Shows plus contact and hit tools, but he's not without some swing and miss tendencies, as we saw last year. That plus speed, like you mentioned, makes him a strong leadoff hitter until the emergence of Corbin Carroll. Overall, a really nice package, which I know Nation likes. Lends itself to a nice blend of a 15-15 or even a 2020 season if he really pans out. Long-term, should be a nice run total guy, good fifth category guy with his good on-base numbers. I expect him to see him back in AAA this year. Really good shot to emerge on a really weak Diamondbacks team, though. Should have a nice chance to get some playing time and get some seasoning.
Alec Thomas seems like one of those players that's going to have the ability to help you in all 5 categories. So that's always an exciting prospect to be able to draft in maybe your early first rounds or your second rounds here, depending on who's available in your rookie draft. But now let's move over to George Kirby, somebody that I was super high on last year. Really excited to see his breakout continue. You guys have him at 22 overall right now. Tessmonster, you wanted to touch on him, and we know everything about that Mariners organization and how high I am personally on them. Tessmonster, tell everyone why you should buy on George Kirby.
Yeah, I'm with you. He was somebody I was really excited, and he slipped to me in last year's draft, which made me even more excited. Arguably one of the best strike throwers in baseball at any level. A lot of people question the virtue of the Mariners taking a strike thrower that didn't flash elite strikeout upside at a small school in the first round. He really quickly put that to bed last year, though, while maintaining strong control and striking out 10.6 batters per 9 in high A and AA last year. He got a nice mid-90s heater and consistently improving secondary offerings to make a true 4-pitch mix, which should help him at the next level. I am mildly concerned that he hasn't thrown 100 innings in a single season to date. He's definitely going to need a season or maybe 2 to lengthen out before we see him at the major league level, I think. We saw that last year where his starts were a little bit more spread out, missed a couple of weeks due to shoulder fatigue. So that's going to be something I'm looking for next year. If he can get some of the innings loads that we like with some of the other prospects we'll touch on or have touched on, like a Max Meyer. So that's going to be something I'm looking for. But ultimately, definitely a player I project with a strong whip once he reaches the show. And if he can continue to maintain that strong K rate, he could be an elite 5x5 asset, I think.
Yeah, Tessmonster, it sounds like you've bought into the shares of George Kirby. And last year, I really wish I would have been there with you. But between Max Meyer, George Kirby, and Asa Lacy, I bet on the wrong two arms. I leaned a little bit more Asa Lacy and Meyer. But based off the season that Kirby had, I mean, yeah, we haven't seen him, quite go over that 100-inning limit and really extend that to really be MLB ready. But between his elite control, his plus pitches, I mean, this is the full package here. And I can't really disagree on a lot of things you touched with, but I think there's no doubt, unless there's some major injury that happens, that this guy is up next year. He is by far, in my opinion, the most MLB ready pitcher in the top 100 prospects, but he does unfortunately have a lot of people in front of him that are on that current starting rotation. So I think that's the one thing that concerns me is when do we see him up? But I see no problem as a 2023 rotation mix with the current guys they have.
Tessmonster, you said that he has an elite 4-pitch mix coming forward. I don't know if you just read some of the rumors that just came out, but there was talk that he has a 5th pitch that he hasn't shown yet, and that's actually a knuckleball that he's looking to refine and be able to throw in a few times a game. What do you think about somebody who uses a knuckleball and being able to bring that out of nowhere on an 0-2 count to a batter?
That is very interesting to me. Obviously, the art of the knuckleball is almost a dead thing in baseball these days. For me, as a guy who used to throw a forkball, which isn't a knuckleball, but has the similar tumbling stuff, I'm really excited to see that. I'll be interesting to see how he incorporates that, because he does mix his pitches so well that it'll be interesting to see what situations he turns to that too. But that's an interesting caveat that I had not read yet. So I'll be excited to see that, especially since nobody has really thrown it at a high level since, I don't know, Dickey or Wakefield.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I saw pop up on Twitter yesterday, talking about somebody with an elite stuff or elite control, and then also bringing a knuckleball into the mix here. And if he can somehow locate a knuckleball or go from a mid-90s fastball and now dropping a 55, 60 mile an hour knuckleball on you, he could really keep hitters off even more than he has been on that pitch mix. So it'll be definitely interesting to see him work on that here in Double-A coming out this year. And there's definitely some excitement on the next player we want to touch on, and that's Khalil Watson. Tyler, I know just seeing his name gets you a little excited, so why don't you let us know what there is to be all happy about with him?
Yeah, I used to be the old school guy with baseball, just play the game and everything, but nowadays it is extremely fun to see the Jose Bautista pimp that home run, and you watch these guys and how it just pisses pitchers off, and it makes me extremely happy because it just creates that, that hate between teams. Well, if you're looking for a guy coming up in the Miami organization that could do that, he loves pimping home runs. He loves the theatrics, and this is just in high school that we've seen him do it. Khalil Watson is my guy. He's a very fun prep bat out of North Carolina. He wasn't hyped up as much as Meyer, Lawler, Brady House, but scouts are starting to change their mind. His hit tool isn't the biggest strength, as he is known for hunting fastballs. He needs to work on his pitch recognition, but Watson right now coming up as that prep guy was only sitting at about 5'11", 170. They expect him to gain about another 20, 25 pounds. It's very still underplayed, even at his current size, how amazing his bat speed is, and even at that young age. He also has a lift to his swing that is going to play very well in the big leagues with just a launch angle. It's not that, quite level swing. We're starting to see that approach from these young hitters to change with a little bit more of a launch angle from it. He's got great athleticism. The separation he creates in his swing shows off his mobility, helps his, add to that narrative. His swing and body will age in terms of the impact with the stick. I do believe, though, due to his size and range, mainly because of his range. I think we do see him shift off that shortstop position. We see him probably profile more as a second baseman, third baseman. But overall, if I had to comp him to a player currently, I think he's going to be bigger than this player. I think he looks a lot like Lindor. He's got a similar swing as Lindor, and he could have that same impact.
For me, I mean, a lot of people talked about him as being a top 5 talent in last year's draft, and he could ultimately end up being the steal of the draft here for the Marlins at 16 overall. Elite level bat speed gives him considerably more power than his 5'9", 180 frame suggests. I've got a little bit of different take here because I think he has better pitch recognition than you alluded to. For somebody who draws walks at the rate that he did, especially in his short stint last year, I think he's got a nice mix of safe floor and elite upside that I really like in my prospects. Mechanically, you touched on it, that uppercut swing we see from power hitters, but he's got the smaller frame and shorter levers really prevent him from being vulnerable and too long to velocity. He's got the profile to hit for a blend of contact and big power at middle infield. Whether that's second base, shortstop, I don't know if he's a fit at third. I mean, he could play it, but it seems like a waste of his range to put him at a position like that, where up the middle, you talk about him with Jazz. That could be a fun combo to watch for years. So I'd love to see him develop a little bit more, and I can't wait to see what comes from him.
We've touched on players that.
One sec, Nation. I think I heard Tessmonster say he was 5'9", and I think he's undervaluing the blessings of additional 2 inches in life. And good for you, Tessmonster, for not recognizing that. But I have him at 5'11", so I think he got drafted young. He grew a little bit in his senior year, but as much as you say, his pitch, his plate discipline's really good. I think we see a lot of that because in low ball, we see him recognizing fastballs and hunting for those fastballs. I think when we see these more elite pitchers with off speed, I think we're going to see him struggle a little bit more. I don't want to say his plate discipline's bad. I just think he definitely hunts for fastballs, and this is something that he's going to have to adjust when these pitchers become a little bit more elite. But overall, I mean, I think we share a very similar opinion. This was a steal for Miami that late in the draft.
It sounds to me a little bit like a guy like me who lists themselves as 6 foot when they're clearly not.
I guess those extra 2 inches show up depending on where you're going to measure from, if you know what I'm talking about. But he's also one of those guys that we've touched on, and we'll touch on with some of the other prospects coming up in the top 10 later, that enjoys playing baseball, and you can just see it in his everyday approach to the game. And I always think that leads a little bit more credence into a player's development. Just loving to be around the game, loving kind of everything about it. You look at players like Soto, like Ken Griffey Jr. in the past, like a Bryce Harper. You see these players that just love baseball and getting to that elite level, being around there. So I think that's one thing, especially him having a fun time every day at the field with Jazz, like you alluded to up the middle there. That's really going to aid in his development and be a lot of fun for everyone to watch. And now let's move away from the prospects that are a few years away, and let's go to Triston Casas. You guys have him at 19. Tyler, you're a little bit higher on him, and I think there's a little bit of disagreement between you and Tessmonster on when he's going to come up, but I'll let you guys touch on that in a little bit here. Tyler, why don't you kick it off?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, anybody that buys into what Tessmonster's selling is foolish because he's wrong often. But that being said, I'm back to my saying this is definitely my guy. I bought a lot of shares into him. He's one of the, probably one of my favorite prospects that we're going to be talking about, and probably the biggest prospect. I mean, he's thick with multiple C's in there. He sits around 6'4", 6'5", 240, 250 pounds. He's a lot more athletic than people give him based off, they see his size. They think, he's going to be very slow. I think that's something that actually plays pretty well. He has a crouch stance, but a very strong lower half with a nice fluid swing. Very good tracking skills, but has known to struggle a little bit against lefties. So that's going to be a little bit of a concern to watch. But if you're basing your opinion on his stats for his power, you're going to miss out on this guy. He hasn't truly flashed with his power this last year. Between AA and AAA, we saw him bat 279, 395 on base percentage, 14 home runs. even stole 7 bases, which is sort of where I say that speed plays into even how big he is. I think it's misleading. His plate discipline's great. We saw his K to walk ratio been very good over his first couple of years. If you're thinking, this is a guy that's going to top out at 20 to 25 home runs, you're going to be gravely mistaken. I think this is a guy that easily has 30 plus home runs in his arsenal. 14 home runs across 86 games, will play over a 162 game season. And I think that power is only going to develop more when he actually continues to work on his swing. So this is sort of where Tessmonster, I want to offer a shot bet to you before you even start to break down and tear my hopes up on, this guy coming up. Even with the season being delayed, I think this is a guy we see before August 1st for Boston. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's a shot, except for he's kind of log-jammed. I mean, you're talking about Bobby Dahlbeck and JD Martinez currently playing in his current positions. So I don't know where he's going to slot into the lineup. So, yeah, I'm inclined to let you lose another shot, but that's fine.
I'll talk about log jams all day, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to take that X-Lax, expected to come out, and he's going to be on that first base side once Bobby Dahlbeck is a bust.
Well, bartender put it on the board. So, I mean, for me, when we're talking about Casas, I mean, I don't think there's as much differentiation as the shot bet might indicate. I just question when we'll see him because of the aforementioned logjam with Bobby Dahlbeck playing first, JD Martinez not being able to play a position. And they were reasonably productive last year, but you're talking about one of the best bats in that 2018 draft, and he's not that prototypical power hitting first baseman. We saw that strong hit tool that he had last year, really good average, excellent walk rate. Though it was originally thought he could play third base, that's just not going to happen. He does have all the measurables you want to see at first base, though. Really continued to work on his batting ability in the Arizona Fall League and put on an absolute clinic. 372 average and 17 walks in 21 games really set him apart. And like you said, he does have sneaky speed for his side. I mean, 3 triples and 7 steals to his credit last year. So that's a factor. I wouldn't count on him much in 5x5, but anywhere you can chip in on a steal, that's excellent value. So it's a player I really like. I just question when we'll see him.
Tessmonster, if a couple questions for you, just to see where you value him for our viewers. Would you say from a first base standpoint, do you see maybe a 5 to 10 steal, 30 plus home run kind of guy from Casas?
I definitely see the long balls. I don't know how much the steals are going to play. I especially if he continues to build on that frame. I think 5 steals might be the ceiling there.
Okay, fair enough. It's okay. You'll be proven wrong. He's got sneaky speed. He's twice as fast as me, but that's not saying much. But he's gonna put up them 10 spots. So put it on the board.
And now, which is shocking nobody at this point with the amount of catchers that we were talking about, Henry Davis. You guys have him at 18. There's a lot to like. There's a path to playing time. Tessmonster, why don't you kick it off?
This is one of my favorite prospects to talk about this year. Showed every bit of why he deserved to be the first overall pick in 2021 with a 370 average, 31 walks to 24 strikeouts, and 15 home runs and 10 steals at Louisville last year. He's got elite pitch recognition and plate discipline that really separate him from other prospects at the position, along with his ability to stay behind the plate and add raw power to that. Raw! Despite some speed at the position, like we've talked about with some other catchers like Harry Ford, ultimately he's going to stay at catcher because he does have the plus arm, even though he needs a little bit of work on his receiving ability. I think long-term he's going to profile as an elite catcher at the big league level. I'm thinking JT Realmuto, but even more power potential here. I think he's a consistent 25, maybe 30 home run hitter, 280 average, 350 OVP, and he's going to chip in 10 to 15 steals, no problem. Probably starts the year at high A, but I think he should ascend through the ranks pretty quickly. We could see him at double A or even triple A next year just because of how advanced his bat is.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you much here. I think I hate how many catchers we've talked about I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, it's such a tough position to want to draft for. But man, there's so many good catchers in this draft board, and if it wasn't for Adley, this by far would be my number one catcher. And I think we're going to see in 3-4 years Adley and Henry be those two catchers that we're going to be continuously talking about. I mean, he just has a nice level swing. He's got very little lock to it, which is very surprising when you actually see how big he is. He's mainly a line drive hitter. But when you actually see his home runs, man, do they get out in a hurry. With all this being said, I see him actually probably starting at AA this year, ending in AAA, and being up very quickly by next year. You sort of touched on, his projected ability. 280 average, I think, is very doable for him. I see him more of around that 20 to 25 home run guy, unless he really works on that launch angle. I think that's something, when he starts to get a wood bat in his hand, is going to downgrade a little bit until he can maybe change his bat path. But I don't think that's going to be difficult for him. But you sort of touch on the speed. I think, that Real Muto speed is definitely doable for him. I see him probably around that 5 to 10 stolen bases, and from a catcher position, that's damn good. So yeah, I stamp of approval on Henry Davis. Go get him before it's too late.
That speed at the catcher position is something we've talked about with some of these catchers coming up, and being able to steal out 5 or 10 extra stolen bases from a position that historically doesn't give you any is definitely a big boost in your lineup, and gives you a little bit more position flexibility as you're creating your roster. So it's always something to keep in the back of your mind as you're filling out your roster and trying to figure out how you can win those categories in 5x5. And moving back to some of those prospects that might take a little bit, you have Jack Leiter here at 16, one of those pretty polished college arms coming out. Tessmonster, I know you like him a lot. Some people have him as their number 1 pitcher on the board right now. You guys have him, I think, at number 2. But tell us what to like about him and why we should buy into this elite college arm.
Yeah, so many of the prospects that we talk about every year need a lot of seasoning to reach their potential. But this is a first-round pick that is about as polished on the mound as they come. Absolute ace at Vanderbilt. We saw very few questions about his top-end potential. Mid-90s heater, plus curve, plus slider. Didn't use the changeup very much at Vanderbilt, but it's definitely a tool in his arsenal that he's flashed with in the past. I do have a few questions about his command, even at Vanderbilt. He walked nearly 4 batters per 9, which is well above the major league average. So I'd like to see that get reined in a bit. I also have a few questions about his workload maintenance moving forward. How quickly can he ascend, and what inning limitations might we see early in his career? Those are some questions for me. I know he took a week off for maintenance last year, didn't pitch in the postseason or even conference tournament. So these are a few questions that I'm going to have, but overall, we're seeing a true modern power pitcher, and he's got a huge ceiling.
Yeah, this is just another guy. I'm not going to add much to it because I just think that, if you're not pretty unanimous on the beliefs of Jack Leiter and how this is probably as close to as a guarantee as you can get from a pitcher coming out of college, you're not going to buy into many pitchers moving forward. But he's got elite pitches. He's got a great mentality, great mechanics. He's got a dad that, pitched in the big leagues that he gets to learn from, and the resources he needs to develop into that big league role. So I don't see the transition from him going to, college ball at a tough division to AA into AAA. I see him progressing pretty quickly. That being said, you sort of touched on his kryptonite. His walks per 9 are very concerning. I mean, he's got plus stuff, and it's not surprising with someone that throws a little bit harder with those elite spin rates that he produces, that, he struggles a little bit with his control. But that is going to be something he's going to have to work on to get that next call up. But you're drafting someone for the maturity, the mentality that they have, their consistency and mechanics, their plus pitches. This is a very safe pick, and I don't think I've ever put someone so high on a draft board coming out of college or a prep arm. If you're going to do it, this is that guy. Tyler,
you touched on it a little bit of one of the things I wanted to get Tessmonster's opinion on, and that is that pedigree, that family pedigree we've seen of the Bichettes. We've seen Vlad. We've seen some of these players, like even back in the day at Ken Griffey Jr., that come up with a dad who's played in baseball, who has exceeded in baseball. What do you take on that as far as the son's development? Do you think this adds to Jack's development, having Al as a dad and being able to kind of guide him and build his repertoire?
Yeah, I could run with that. I mean, obviously you're seeing somebody who had strong success in the major leagues in Al. And I think it says a lot to what knowledge he can bestow on Jack. But there's also a little bit of a difference here because Al was obviously known as more of a finesse pitcher, I think, versus Jack, who's known as a modern power pitcher, at least with the stuff that he has at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how he can parlay that. But obviously we've seen a ton of immense success, especially in recent history with, guys who have had pedigree as their father, as their uncle, whatever it be. And they're coming up and having just that leg up, it seems, on a lot of other players that are the same age. Obviously we've seen Vlad and Bo and other guys tear the cover off the ball. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know if there's a pitcher recently that we've been able to talk about in the same vein. So that'll be fun to watch.
I don't even think if I had his dad or Vlad's dad or whoever, it would have been enough help to me. So I don't want to, downgrade just the fact of how athletic these guys are, but they've, from early on been eat, sleep, breathing baseball, and they've been programmed. So they have that mindset of what it takes. Their dads know, and that's I think that gets undervalued. But I mean, I hate to say it, they still are athletic specimens, and I think Jack Leiter, provides that maturity that is needed. So that being said, I guess I'm saying how terrible I was at high school. So
yeah, we're all very well aware of how terrible you were at baseball. And being able to go forward, I don't know what could have happened to help you go anywhere after high school baseball. But we're all definitely excited to see where Jack goes into the minors and develops there into the big leagues and being able to compete with those major league hitters. And now back to what I think you guys are going to talk about as a really safe player. And that's going to be Robert Hassel. You have him at 15 here. Tyler, I know he kind of fits your mold of what you're looking for in prospects. So tell everyone what there's like about him.
Yeah, I mean, two big things for me when it comes to prospects are proximity to the bigs, like sort of what path do they have to get there and, where have they been playing? Also, their hit tool. And for this next player, if it wasn't for CJ Abrams, this would be my favorite Padres prospect, and I think he easily has the potential to be a better player than CJ Abrams. We just can't give him that spot above him at this point. Between the speed, hit tool, decent power from Hassel makes him a roto beast. In 2021, we finally got to see this prep bat out of Tennessee tear it up in A and high A ball. He batted .303, a .393 on base percentage, 11 home runs, 34 stolen bases, and he only got caught 6 times across 110 games. He's got a very similar athletic build as like a Kyle Tucker, who has great speed, good power. Hassel has the potential to hit 20 home runs, but I think he does need to fill out a little bit more. He also is, with his speed, going to be that consistently 30-plus stolen base kind of guy. And from a roto standpoint, with his hit tool, his power, his speed, he just makes it very easy to draft him this high up. He looks slender at the plate, but he stands about 6'2", 200 pounds currently. He's got a short, compact swing. He's got good, not great bat speed, but that's something that we have seen in the small progression from the beginning of 2021 to the end that someone was developing. But as far as fielding, I don't think you have to worry about him slowing down. He could easily be a center fielder. He's got good speed, good arm. He, has that good first break when the bat comes off the ball, or the ball comes off the bat. But I think this is a guy that easily will climb up the ranks quicker and quicker and be in the bigs within 2 years, just because of how talented across the board he is. And I think this is the last time we talk about him before, he's a big leaguer.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely talking about one of the most polished players that was drafted that year, and he's definitely making contact excellently to all fields with ease. So from that sense, he's an incredibly safe player. But what I love even more, and I've probably touched on this ad nauseum at this point, but Strong plate discipline is a huge factor for me. 66 walks last year and only a 17% strikeout rate is huge for me. We saw him last year in spring training with a huge uppercut swing, and he swung through a ton of velocity because of it. He really seemed to fix that over the course of the season and posted a 303 average. We definitely saw some nice speed out of him too, like Tyler touched on. Those 34 steals are going to play really nice, especially at the top of the lineup, where I see him a really strong bat there. Strong bat, on base ability, speed. What's not to like in that at the top of your order? But ultimately, I have a few questions on the true power upside here. It's been projected higher, but we saw when he tried to do it last year, it just wasn't happening. And so, Tyler, what are your thoughts on his ultimate power output? Do you think he ends up in that 20-plus category, or do you think he's a nice player who, if he does what he does best, can still be a nice fantasy asset?
No, I mean, you're talking a guy that's going to steal 25 to 30-plus bases. But if I had to project him, I'm probably going to put him in that 15 to 18 range, with sometimes going to that 20 range. But with his speed, his hit tool, his plate discipline, I mean, there's no one that's going to be mad with him only hitting 14 to 15 home runs. And I think that is easily doable for him year in and year out.
Tessmonster, do you agree with that power output range? Because I see you guys have him ranked pretty high, but if he's only putting up 15 home runs, he looks like a 4-category kind of guy, or even a 3-category kind of guy hitting at the top of the order and not getting those RBIs. Is that really worth almost a first-round draft pick at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's not really a concern, because if you're talking about 4 categories, but if you can be an absolute force in those categories, I'm not really worried about it. He's going to be hitting at the top of a strong lineup, probably in the 2 role, maybe a leadoff hitter where, especially with the addition of the DH, you're not going to see that pitcher hitting in the 9 hole. So that's promising for me, even for all leadoff hitters, whether it be National League, American League. It's going to be stronger offensive output for, your first hitter almost unanimously. But it's something that I really like, because you're talking about Hassel, where if he can give you 30, 40 steals, if he can score 100 runs, if he can give you that 5th category, whatever else he gives you is just a plus in my book. So if you can pencil him in to lead your lineup in 3, 4 categories, I'm taking him in the first round every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
And jumping into the next prospect here, some of you guys have touched on a little bit. Tessmonster, another player you drafted last year. I'm starting to get the feeling that you might just be ranking your players a little bit higher than they should be. And that's Corbin Carroll. You guys have him at 13 here. Tessmonster, tell us why you liked him. Tell us why you drafted him last year, and show him off a little bit.
I mean, I can see why you would think that, but I guess what I'm getting out of this is that I'm a better drafter than you. Really unfortunate injury absolutely derailed his last season almost as soon as it began. And the 2019 first rounder has now missed almost 2 full seasons of ball. Still, his 2020 instructional league and 21 spring performances have really helped lend to the notion that he's incredibly skilled and advanced for his age. He's projected as a really dangerous prototypical leadoff hitter, kind of in the same vein as Hassel. Veteran quality at bats already. His lack of power projection is actually more of his approach at the plate rather than a lack of power. It's a really strong blend of gap-to-gap power, true top-end speed here. The biggest question mark here is obviously the injury he sustained last year. It's, let me read from my notes here so I don't mispronounce this. A posterior capsular avulsion fracture and Tyler's favorite torn labrum that he sustained on a home run last year. Definitely not a common injury in the industry. I've got a little bit of concern about that because it could have a lasting impact, especially without a history of treatment of this particular injury in the major leagues. But still, assuming he can recover, he's one of the ultimate high floor, even higher ceiling players, just because of that true blend of hit and speed with a little bit of upside power that could see him hit 10 to 15, maybe more consistently.
God, I thought you were never going to stop talking about your own prospect pick. Good for you. Anyway, I happen to agree with you. You just happen to get lucky. I don't think it's any skill, but yeah, this is a prospect that you have to be high on. There's so much potential. We unfortunately, we missed the 2020 season of him, which was probably a good development year. I mean, we thought for a lot of prospects, but 2021, we finally were able to start watching him, and we saw him for about 7 games before, in the best way you could go out, he hits a home run, but tears his, I think you were trying to say labia, but it was his labrum, a lot of big words for you there. But that being said, I mean, it doesn't make me less interested in him. I think between how great he is as a defender, how great his hit tool is, even in a small sample size that we've seen so far, I still have to put him above Alec Thomas. There's too much potential. Now, the biggest question, and I guess Tessmonster, I'll throw your way, is, a lot of people projected his power to raw game power being around that 55 to 60 tool, but we haven't seen it yet. Do you actually think that, he is going to be that 25 home run guy where we can rank him above Alec Thomas?
I mean, for me, it's more of a question of what you're valuing at this point. And like I said, I think my biggest takeaway is that I don't think it's a lack of power. I think it's just what he does so well with the ball. I mean, when you can spray it across the field and use your speed to take those extra bases and still maintain a high average, that's an incredibly valuable tool for me. You're going to lend to stolen bases, runs, that 5th category, and everything else you get is golden. And I think he's one-upping Robert Hassel here in the sense that his speed is arguably even better, and he's got a better ball-to-bat ability, I think. So this is why I have him ranked as highly as I do, and it's truly a testament to what he does well at the plate. So I'm not bothered if he doesn't hit that 55 to 60 grade in power because of how well he plays the game in every other facet.
You keep talking about all your players that you drafted here in the outside of the top 10. I guess we'll wait until we get into the top 10 to see the players that I've been drafting. But I couldn't agree more with you guys. You love Corbin Carroll. I'm a big Diamondbacks guy too. So seeing his development, hopefully healthy this year. Again, I think Tyler touched on it off air a little bit on this kind of being a make or break season for him on where he is in our rankings coming next year. Tyler, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we've had him high in the rankings for the last couple of years, and rightfully so. I mean, there's too much potential not to keep him there, even without, playing for almost 2 years now. But I think we're at that point where if he doesn't play over a half a season, if not, over 2/3 of a season, then we start to factor in, is he injury prone? Is this someone that, you should probably consider a risk factor and start to move down that prospect board? I think if we don't see, probably 2/3 of a season out of him, he's not going to be in my top 50 next year because the development's going to be slowed down, and it's going to really make me concerned about him moving forward.
And now, moving right along, we will dive into the last prospect that we're going to touch on today, and also the highest rated pitcher that you guys have on the prospect board, and that's going to be Grayson Rodriguez. You guys got him at 12. Tessmonster, you've been talking a lot about some of these pitching prospects. Why don't you round out the number 1 pitcher on the board?
Well, I think it should be noted that you failed to neglect I also drafted him. But this was absolutely one of the few prep arms in the last few years that has defied the ever-increasing trend of injuries to prep arms and has had a true meteoric rise in the sense of pitchers since he was drafted in 2018. Really good health and impressive numbers have made him arguably, depending on who you talk to, the top pitching prospect in the minor leagues, a career minor league ERA of 2.41 and a 12.9 K per 9. And his strikeout numbers were even better last year at high A and double A at 14.1. His biggest asset here is the elite level control. That dropped to 2.4 walks per 9 last year. Good for a 6-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Really lively fastball sitting in the upper 90s. His changeup has developed into one of his better pitches, along with a wipeout slider and a really strong curve piece. Over the season off in 2020, he developed a cutter in the low 90s, and that has really quickly become one of his better pitches as well. Really grades as plus right now. So I expect to see him at AAA this year. He should be primed for a rapid ascent to the majors at some point this season, especially for a Baltimore staff that really has nobody.
Nation, he's sitting there bragging about his players, but I do have to point out that's only one league. If we talked about the other league he's in with me, I don't think there's but maybe two of his prospects are in the top 100. So let's just settle down about bragging rights. But
knock him off his pedestal.
That being said, I mean, yeah, knock him off that pedestal. But that being said,
sometimes you have to trade prospects to win titles. Okay.
Hey, whatever it costs. But anyway, I will say this is a player I am very much hoping debuts in 2022. Probably one of the top 3 players I'm expecting to debut, and I can't wait to watch. Fortunately, he plays for a bad team, but that's not going to change my outlook on him. He's just like, George Kirby, but maybe a little bit less. He shows great control and consistency in his mechanics, which is a huge thing for me. The reason why I have him as my number 1 pitcher over Kirby, however, is how dominant 3 of his pitches are from a whip percentage. Now his curveball isn't even that far behind to give him 4 pitches, and that might be that last piece he needs to take that next step. He has legit stuff to be an ace in the bigs almost on any team. And I mean, this is a prep arm that we've got to see slowly grow over the years. And if it wasn't for that 2020 season, we probably would have seen him, if not break camp this season, maybe even debut at the end of last season for the Orioles. So I have to say, when it comes to it, there's not a more exciting pitcher with plus stuff, good mechanics. I mean, I talked about Jack Leiter being the sure thing, but this is someone that did not play college ball, that developed in the minor league systems, that's proven it, and I expect to see him up this season.
And that wraps up our players that we wanted to touch on in 11 to 25. Tessmonster, why don't you let everyone know what you got coming up here in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so today I just dropped a new article that I'll touch on when we record the next episode, because that's also going to be today due to technical difficulties. But we're going to be talking about those top 10 prospects. We're going to be talking about the top 300 players in pretty short order here. I know you're going to be on board for that, Nation. I know Tyler's excited to do that with us. Also got a couple other podcasts coming up. Going to be talking about some hockey playoff podcasts, getting your roster ready for your playoff run, looking at the schedule, who you can add and drop. So that'll be exciting. Looking to get together pretty quick here with Jason to talk about roster construction, rookie drafts, and everything that came out of our Dynasty lottery last weekend. So that'll be exciting. And in addition to that, going to be moving on with the top prospects for other divisions. Going to touch on the NL East, NL Central, and a couple other things. So it's really exciting time here at the Dynasty Locker Room.
Yeah, I hear you talked about our lottery, and again, failed to mention that I won our lottery here, and we'll have that number 1 pick next year. So that took a lot of skill. I can let everyone know how to be able to get that number 1 lottery pick and be able to really use luck on your side and just be really good on that side of it. But Tyler, what do you got coming up over here?
Yeah, you sort of talked about running lotteries and how to be good at it. Note to self, I was the one that pulled balls. Just give your guy a 20, whoever's pulling the balls, and I guarantee you'll get that number 1 ball. But that being said, I'm excited to finish these top 10 prospects here, in our next podcast. Can't wait. I mean, it's unfortunately we get to the point where Tessmonster and I are going to be agreeing on these players just because they're proven it over, in the minor leagues or in college ball, and just there's no doubt that, if you're doing a top 10 ranking, but these are your guys. So I don't think you're going to see us disagree much, but I'm excited to finish this top 100 prospect list. You guys are also welcoming me into your top 300 Dynasty Roto players. And, I started to build my list and found out, how much of a challenge from going from a point standpoint to a Roto league it was. So I will talk about that when we break down our top 300 guys and why, I might rank them a little bit different than you. And I'm excited to hear, what kind of input you guys have for me to help me become a better Roto mind.
Be better.
It'll definitely be better. Be something interesting to talk about too, of coming from that points background, being able to translate, give people a little bit more insight on if they are in a points league, how you can kind of change the rankings for players and adjust your draft accordingly. But I'm definitely really excited to talk in that top 300 players. I know we've put a lot of work into it the last month and a half, being able to finalize where we're at in those rankings. And just looking at them briefly, we can see that we got some disagreements on some players. So definitely excited to dive in and hash that out. But talking about fantasy baseball, definitely, Tyler, I know you just set up our DLR league. So everyone that wants to be a part of it, come comment, come leave us a message, come find us on Reddit, come find us on our forum that is up and running, and let us know that you want to jump in. We'll have some unique prizes. Some people will be able to jump on the podcast and talk with us. It'll be a really fun time just being able to highlight real life examples of a dynasty baseball league and kind of how transactions happened, how some trades came about, and kind of different people's thought processes moving forward. So it's definitely really exciting. Tessmonster, any last words?
No, I mean, I think you touched on everything, surprisingly. But obviously, you know where to find me, DLR Tessmonster. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Reddit. Happy to interact with everybody. Obviously, you can find everything that I write here at the Dynasty Locker Room.
And Tyler?
Yeah, you can find me on Reddit. I love to respond to people. My title is FART0263. That's FARRT0263. Feel free to make some jokes. It's obviously FART0263 with 2 R's. I'm also on Twitter. I love to respond to people that, might disagree, might agree with me, and just sort of, get that conversation going on, why I'm always right. So feel free to hit me up.
And if anything was proven, that first shot bet proves that Tyler's always right. And
Great
you
point.
can definitely go and find me, Nation DLR, Twitter, Reddit. Come talk to us. Come find us on our forum. Hit us up. And until next time, when we break into those top 10 prospects, see you then.